The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 186.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart.
Change, my dear, and it seems on a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician healers. Wearing a bit thin.
Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the fifth Doctor story, Earthshock. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hello, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, if you could, we would greatly appreciate it. It always helps us so much when you write a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from. Those reviews are a key way of us getting new listeners and expanding the audience, as well as when you share the podcast with your friends. If you have Doctor Who friends and you have not shared The Secrets of Doctor Who with them, well, how can you call yourself a friend still? Come on, please share the podcast with your friends. And help us grow this community, which we have been greatly expanding over the past. We've been doing this for like 7 years, I think now, or 6 years, or something crazy like that.
I believe it's been that long.
It's hard to believe. I was looking at some early episodes recently of our show, and it's just like, wow, that was a long time ago. So, and we've got a lot more to do. There's 50 plus years of Doctor Who out there. We need to, keep going at it. So, please help folks discover this podcast and so that they can enjoy it too. So we are talking about an episode called Earthshock. And I know that both of you were greatly anticipating this.
Fifth Doctor.
That's right. It aired in 1982, and his companions for now are Tegan, Nyssa, and Adric. And you were both very interested in this episode. Like, you were greatly anticipating it. I've not seen it before.
And we hid things about it from you deliberately for years.
Right.
Yes.
I guess that'd be the good question is, were you spoiled by what happened in this episode without going into what it was?
Yes. Because I went to the TARDIS Wiki, as I always do in preparation.
We told you not to do that.
I know.
We warned you.
I know. It's right there, like in the first paragraph of the Wikia, the Wiki entry.
And that's why you watch the episode and then you go to the Wikia.
I know. Well, no, I need to, probably.
You need to watch the episode and then go to the Wikia.
So, yeah, I was spoiled on that, but it was still a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into it. Why it may not have had the impact for me that it might have had for others, partly because I'm watching everything out of order,
right?
So that it doesn't have the same impact. But so the big surprise in this was that the Cybermen returned, right? Just kidding.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
That was a surprise in it, but that's the end of episode 1 villain reveal.
Yes. Yeah. Well, in fact, that was apparently they went to great lengths to hide the fact that the Cybermen were going to be in this episode. All of the pre-publicity, because you remember the old TV Guide stuff or the Radio Times, which is what they have in the UK, they would have like upcoming episodes and they would list, the people, the characters they're playing and stuff like this. And instead of Cyber Leader and Cyber Lieutenant, it just said Leader and Lieutenant. And they didn't have a preview of this episode either available that showed the Cybermen and stuff. And that's because it's been a long time since we've had Cybermen at this point, right?
Right. That's where they showed in the episode previous incarnations of the Doctor that had faced the Cybermen, first Doctor, second Doctor, fourth Doctor. But the fourth Doctor was such a long period, and I want to say it was very early on in the fourth Doctor's run that he faced the Cybermen and then never saw him again until this episode.
In fact, we've reviewed the early episode where Tom Baker faced them. It was the Planet of Gold Voga thing where they went down into Wookiee Hole Caverns and Elizabeth Sladen almost got swept over a waterfall.
Yep.
Yes.
I don't recall if there's a later episode in the Tom Baker era with them. I don't believe so.
I don't think so, no.
I could be mistaken about that, but yeah, it had been quite some time. And the Cybermen were not as regular in Classic Who as they are in modern Doctor Who.
Right.
They had appeared, at the very end of the first Doctor in his final adventure, and then they appeared some in the second Doctor. They were not at all in the third Doctor, and then at least once, maybe only once in the fourth Doctor.
Right. Yes. So they were. It's been a long time. We've actually seen all of those and reviewed all of those episodes so far. So that's interesting that we've actually been able to do that till we got to this. So let's talk about the episode itself. It starts in a quarry.
Oh yeah, I know. The very first note I took, back on the planet of the rock quarries.
Yep.
Yeah. My first note is, oh look, a quarry.
Yeah.
So
at least this time they're not being shy of saying, oh, this is a foreign planet. No, it's a quarry on Earth where they found some caves.
Yes,
for
that's
once,
true.
yeah. What I found interesting, this is really Doctor Who does Alien, and it happens in different ways. In the first part so we got 4 parts. The first 2 parts are set on Earth in the year 2526. So, man, it's like a year late. Otherwise,
it's in the year 2525.
In the year 2525, the song by Zager and Evans.
Yes.
One-hit wonders from the 60s.
Yep.
Now I'll have that running in my head. In any event, it's the first 2 parts are in this cave system on Earth, and then the second 2 parts are on a space freighter. And in the first 2 parts, we have them using a device that displays the location of people in the cave system as dots on a screen.
Yep.
And we see the dots tracking each other and hunting each other, and it's very much like in the original movie Alien.
Mm-hmm.
And people are getting killed and stuff, and they're being picked off one by one, and then, or 2 by 2s, and then when they get on the space freighter, it's clearly the Nostromo, a surrogate for the Nostromo. We have a crew that is very mercenary and obsessed with getting their bonus at all costs, just like in Alien. And it is so tied into Alien that they actually used parts from the movie Alien.
Yes.
The Cybermen have this cyberscope prop that is built from parts scavenged from the Nostromo. And the monitors in the bridge are from the Nostromo.
Right.
So,
right.
Just because, Alien was filmed in England. But this is really, really reminiscent of Alien. And you've got people walking around this massive industrial ship and things like that.
Yeah. It really, and you have the soldiers and the whole thing, just like in Aliens, the sequel. So maybe they picked that up from this. They picked up these soldiers and aliens from this. So what we have, so we have this group of soldiers gather around this entrance to a cave, and they have an archaeologist with them, and something bad has happened to the archaeological team, and only one managed to get out and got help and came back with these soldiers, and that's what we have. And they have this scanner, like you mentioned, Jimmy, and it scans for life signs, heartbeats.
For mammals.
For mammals, that's right, only mammals. Very important. And so it is not finding any heartbeats in the cavern, so that means that they're probably dead. And so they were looking for fossils down here in this cave. But they tell us that it only finds mammalian life, and then we see these dark figures.
Faceless figures.
Dark and faceless in bodysuits walking around. You're like, are they non-mammalian or something else? And finally, after a few minutes, it actually takes a while before this happens, we get to the TARDIS. And so now we have the Doctor talking to Adric on the TARDIS. And Adric is acting all fed up. He's tired of everyone thinking he's a joke. He's a petulant teenager criticizing his father, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And he in fact, he throws something in the Doctor's face. I forget exactly what it is. And the Doctor says, that's not fair.
The Doctor promises to spend more time talking to him. And it's like, just like you promised Tegan. And he's referring to the Doctor promised to get Tegan home, and that hasn't happened yet.
Right. And so the Doctor says that's not fair, and Adric is No, it's never is when you're being criticized, is it? Just as it's never your fault when something goes wrong. I'm like, oh man, this kid's like really begging for grounding or something.
It's interesting. So we may as well go ahead and spoil what this episode is famous for, which is this is Adric's last episode, and he gonna die.
Yeah,
and this is not the first companion to die. There have been 2 companions who have died before now. Both in the first Doctor's time. One of them, and both in the same story, although it was a massive story. It was the 12-part Dalek master plan. And in that, the Doctor lost his companion Katrina, who was a young woman from Greco-Roman times that thought the Doctor was a god and the TARDIS was his celestial temple. And she sacrificed herself by spacing herself in order to... She and a villain were in an airlock, and she pushed the cycle button in order to save everybody from the villain. And so she spaced herself. And then also during the course of that story, the Doctor picked up another companion named Sarah Kingdom, who at the end of the story with the Dalek time rotor thing going, she aged to death. So the Doctor has lost companions before, but it has been a long time. That was back in the first Doctor era. We're now in the fifth Doctor era. So we've had lots of companion departures. None of them have been deaths in that amount of time. Of course, if you go to New Who, well, actually, there's one more companion death also in the fifth Doctor's time. Chameleon, which everybody hated, and so that was fine. But if you go to New Who, we have they go companion death crazy in New Who. You've got River Song dies, Clara dies, Bill dies, Astrid Peth dies, Adelaide Brooke kills herself, and even K9 Mark II dies.
Well, dies is sort of a... Yeah,
I know, they walk some of those back.
Most of them, in fact. Stephen Moffat hates killing people, but he wants to have the emotional resonance of it, but he doesn't want to go through with it.
Well, the thing with Adric too is he was the first long-term companion who died. Yeah. All these other companions, the other two weren't as anywhere near as long as Adric was with in the TARDIS.
Right. Sarah Kingdom was only with the Doctor during the Daleks' master plan, and Katrina had been there for one previous story. And they quickly realized she's not working out. Adric is the first long-termer. Also, but, what I was going to say is you see them setting up a character arc between the Doctor and Adric in this story to try to give context emotionally for Adric's death. So here at the beginning in part 1, the Doctor and Adric are both acting like pouty teenagers with each other. It's not just Adric. The Doctor's being really immature too.
That's true.
And they storm off and can't be in each other's presence and stuff. Adric is demanding to go back to E-Space where he's from, which is a pocket universe. But getting there is really hard. And Adric is saying, oh, well, I've got the mathematical skill and the badge to prove it. To plot the course. And the Doctor is like, I'm not going to stand around while you plot the course to your own destruction. And he storms out of the TARDIS to go for a walk and cool down. Then in part 2, and you have Nyssa and Tegan being the grown-ups in the room. It's like, how are we going to get these two back together? Well, in part 2, the Doctor and Adric face a dramatic situation together, and they bond again. So now they're being much more friendly. They've gotten over their tiff. And that puts them on the path for Adric dying and it having more meaningful consequences for the Doctor.
I have to laugh at Tegan being the voice of reason to the Doctor. She's got the strongest temper of all of them.
Yeah, right. So was Adric at the time, and I don't know if you know this, was he disliked by the fans? Was he criticized and everyone thinks he's a joke?
I mean, I think today we look back at him as a Wesley character, Wesley Crusher from Star Trek. Right. I don't know, Jimmy. Is it your sense that was kind of how he was felt back then?
I was young enough at the time that I didn't perceive Adric that way, but I think adult fans did. At least, I mean, it could all just be everybody has collective hindsight. on this, but the Adric character has been really problematic from the beginning.
Mhm.
I mean, they meant him to be this artful dodger type character that would be endearing. And wow, is he not? He's like a little space brat in space pajamas.
Well, and he's a traitor all the time. I mean, he's constantly
He's a traitor
being
all
a traitor
the time.
to the Doctor.
Yeah, in fact, there are Tom Baker episodes that we have not reviewed yet that you will look forward to seeing, Dom, where Adric is totally trading all over the place.
I know I've seen one of them so far, but yeah, the in the Fifth Doctor time.
Mm-hmm.
And well, that's the thing is there was this tendency back in the 80s to have these precocious young geniuses show up, and that tended to show up all the adults are in the room and be better at everything than them, or to solve things for them, which I think producers thought made the show more interesting for a younger audience. But you end up alienating the older audience that you've already got. So you mentioned that the Doctor goes for a walk to cool off, and that's because not in space, because they actually land in the tunnels that these soldiers are searching in 2526 on Earth. So the Doctor and Nyssa and Tegan, as soon as they walk out of the TARDIS, Adric stays inside to do his calculations into E-space on paper. As soon as in
a little notebook.
Yes, yeah, exactly. They as soon as they walk out of the TARDIS, they appear on the scanner that's on the surface, and the Doctor, because he has two heartbeats, is recognized as an alien, and that gets the head of the soldiers, this unit of soldiers, an officer named Scott, that gets him immediately thinking that the Doctor is somehow responsible for whatever's happened to the archaeologists or the paleontologists.
There's our standard Doctor Who trope. The Doctor walks into a problematic situation and is immediately blamed as the source of the problem.
Right.
A trope which will happen not just once, but twice in this serial. When they get to the space freighter, also it happens.
Yes. He just has a tendency to walk and stand over the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yep.
So the Doctor and Tegan and Nyssa, they're looking at the fossils embedded in the wall and discuss how successful dinosaurs were as a species, although many species.
Yeah.
And how they died out virtually overnight. Let's put a pin in that. That's Chekhov's massive destruction of an extinction.
Yeah, exactly.
Of an extinct species. We'll be coming back to that. So one of the soldiers gets injured in a rockfall, and meanwhile, these soldiers are laboriously making their way through these caves, all the while being followed by these figures who don't show up on scanners. Although every once in a while, there's this blip on the scanner, this bright flare that is apparently one of these creatures using its weapon or something.
It's handgun. I love the androids have what they do is they hold their hand up towards you, palm forward, and there's a little hole in their palm that fires a bullet. So this is a literal handgun. I love it.
It's kind of like the Autons, I think, because they also had a handgun.
But theirs was more like their fingers drop.
Yeah, although they point their fingers at you. This is just palm forward.
So one of the soldiers gets injured in a rockfall and is sent back to the surface with another. And Snyder is the guy on the surface, and Snyder is the guy is not the guy at the scanner. Snyder is this other woman who stayed with them. She goes down to meet them, but she's killed and melted by the faceless body stacking people, these androids, and then the other two are killed too. So they're starting to get picked off one by one, sort of like in Aliens. And then the Doctor and the others are taken captive by the soldiers and accused of killing the original scientist, the paleontologist, while the androids continue to kill soldiers who are separated from the main group. And that's when Adric, who's on the TARDIS, hears an alarm. And I think that's because it's the TARDIS is detecting the androids, I guess.
There's the androids are communicating with their unseen overlords, who at the end of the episode are revealed to be the Cybermen, and that's what Adric picks up on.
Okay. Well, in this cavern, now that the Doctor is being in the companions are being held at gunpoint, they find a hatch behind a rockfall, and but before they can open it, the two androids come rushing in, handguns blazing, and the Doctor identifies them as androids, and the androids scan the Doctor, and we see now at this point who is controlling them: Cybermen, somewhere else, and the Cybermen I noticed that these Cybermen have much more human voices and inflection.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is I greatly appreciate because like you can actually understand them.
They also there are several good things about this model of Cybermen. I don't like them as much as the original Mondasian Cybermen, but they have their suits are like they're silver, but they're like made of plastic, and so they're body fitting, and they look like kind of like a scuba diver's suit. Kind of like a wrinkly scuba diver suit.
I've heard them compared to like flight suits as well,
Flight suits.
Yeah, flight suits would work. And so you get the sense there's a person in there. They're not like metallic suits of armor. And you can see the chins moving inside the transparent faceplate over the mouth. And then they have the more human voices, which have more human inflections. And they have disagreements with each other, and they'll be arguing about what's the best way to handle this. And they clearly, even though they deny having emotions, they clearly do. And all of this makes it much more interesting to have the Cybermen in the story than if they're purely emotionless knights in suits of armor that could just be a robot and there's no body horror.
Right. That's true. So meanwhile, Adric gets the drop on the androids from behind, and which lets the soldiers destroy them. And that gives the Doctor an opportunity to open this hatch that the androids were so interested in protecting. And they find a Cyberman bomb inside about to go off. So that causes the Doctor to run to the TARDIS to turn on the jammer stuff inside. Yeah. And then that, in order to give him time to disarm the bomb, which he and Adric do together and bond over.
Yeah, I like at the beginning of this sequence where the Doctor, the humans have burned a hole in the hatch, and the Doctor tries touching it. It's like, ouch, it's too hot. Yeah. But then he tells everyone to get back because the booby door may be trapped. the door may be booby trapped. And Scott says to him, "What about you?" And he says, "Well, my arm is only this long, and I can't get any further away," as he reaches into it.
I always feel like awkward when I see someone reach an arm into an unknown space. It's like, oh.
You can think of Flash Gordon, where you had to stick your hand in that trunk, and there's a creature there that bites you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's a particular kind of horror. So.
Oh, I also like when they rush everybody into the TARDIS, which is for once they're using the TARDIS not just as a means of transport, but as like a means of protection, and it's playing a greater role in the plot. It's like, there's a bomb. Let's get everyone into the indestructible TARDIS.
Yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I like that they're doing that. Also, the situation is really dramatic as they're trying to deal with this bomb. And so you have the Doctor and companions like springing into action, and the humans are just along for the ride. And so they come into the TARDIS, and the Doctor and companions are talking to each other so much and doing stuff so rapidly to try to deal with the bomb that the humans cannot rationally interrupt them to make comments about it being bigger on the inside. And so you just get, for once, you don't get comments. As soon as they walk in about it's bigger on the inside, you just see their eyes get really big.
Yeah.
Yes. So once they do disarm it, the Doctor is presented with the question, which is, why did someone plant a bomb in this particular cave, and why a bomb and not a missile or something else? Because it's a big enough bomb that it would kill everyone on Earth. I mean, it's a massive...
Or lots of people anyway.
Yeah.
It's physically about the size of like an old 80s jukebox, boombox.
Yes.
But it's supposedly like this super mega bomb that will take a big chunk out of the Earth's surface or something.
Right. The budget only allowed for boombox size. That's
Well, if it's got antimatter in there, it'll do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Oh, antimatter later is going to be fun. Meanwhile, the Cybermen review their surveillance files and recognize the TARDIS, and this is where they see the footage from the first Doctor, 10th Planet, the second Doctor, Wheel in Space, and the fourth Doctor, Revenge of the Cybermen, and not Wheel in Space. Second Doctor Wheel in Space?
Tomb of the
Cybermen.
Yeah, also the Wheel in Space has the Cybermen.
Okay, that's what I got my notes mixed up. TARDIS Wikia notes that their files, they've also previously encountered at this point the Sixth Doctor and Seventh Doctor, but of course those actually haven't taken place at the time this was filmed, so that couldn't have been
They don't have that
logically.
Their
Yes.
TARDIS was broken, and they couldn't go get the footage for those 2 episodes yet.
Right.
I like how the Cybermen piece together that it's the Doctor. They
Right.
kind of fake the audience out at the end of episode 1, where on their cyberscope, the Doctor's face comes up and the Cybermen say, like, destroy everybody or something. And you think they've recognized the Doctor at that point, but they haven't.
Mhm.
They just know there are people down there messing with their bomb, or who may mess with their bomb. And it's not until later that they see the TARDIS, and then they go, oh, the Doctor must be here. And then, okay, he's not one of these that we've just called up on the scanner, so he must have regenerated again. So they figure that out. And then they start this process of elimination to figure out who it is. And once the TARDIS is on the space freighter, Adric and the Doctor come out. And at one point, the Cyber Junior guy says, so which one is the Doctor? And the Cyber leader says it's Peter Davison, because even in the face of death, he has the arrogance of a Time Lord.
If the shoe fits.
Yep.
So in the cave, the Doctor is trying to leave to go track down the source of the transmission that was controlling the androids and presumably the bomb. And wants to leave the human soldiers behind, but they insist on coming along, and so he relents and lets them come with him. And then it's at this point that the Doctor thanks Adric for his help, and they have this reconciliation, and then tells him that he will try to help him get home to E-Space. Adric says, "Oh, I've already done the calculations, but I really don't want to go. I was just trying to make a point." Okay, and of course that is a poignant. I'm not really wanting to go. So that's designed to make us be teary-eyed later on. Yep. So when the Cybermen detect that the TARDIS is coming to this freighter, they're not dismayed. They say, "Oh, excellent! This will go well with our plan." And you're like, "Hey, wait a minute! That's not how that's supposed to work. They're supposed to be afraid he's going to disrupt it." Meanwhile, back on the freighter, we have on the bridge of this ship, we have a man and a woman, these 2 crew members, discussing the fact that their captain has been away on this space station a long time, and they're waiting for her to get back. And that's when the TARDIS appears, and the Doctor and Adric, I guess it's Doctor and Adric, go on a recce, as he says, a reconnaissance.
Yeah. One thing I like about, so the crew, I like how mercenary they all are. In terms of just, we really care about getting our bonus.
Yep.
And it's a little interesting about, they care about getting their bonus so much that getting back to Earth with their cargo takes priority in a timely manner, takes priority over the fact that 3 crewmen have disappeared.
Yes.
And
deal with them later.
Deal with that after we get our bonus, man. With the murder, and bring in Lieutenant Columbo later, But Captain Beryl, so the leader is a lady named Captain Briggs, played by the British actress Beryl Reid, who apparently was quite well known at the time. And she is awesome. She's great. Love Captain Briggs. She is just no nonsense. We're doing this. She has this kind of, she's grandmotherly in appearance, but not in attitude.
No.
and I just like how she's this grandmotherly figure. She really does look like, she's got the grandmother haircut and everything from the that would be of mid 20th century British grandmother haircut and everything.
Right.
But she's no nonsense. And so I really like her.
Yeah.
I also like how the Cybermen betray their emotions by saying, the Doctor must suffer for our past defeats. It's anytime you're wanting someone to suffer because of your past defeats, that's an emotion, guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and the reason that they're delayed from passing is that there's high security right now, and they're being inspected by Earth security at a distance from Earth because of this. There's some kind of interstellar conference going on Earth. But the ship has received clearance to go straight through and should not stop. So that's very important. And they'll lose their bonus if they are delayed at all. So that gives us the dramatic tension for the rest of the story. So the Doctor and Adric wander about. This is apparently a huge ship, and the cyber leader tells whoever he has an inside man on the freighter that we'll find out later is the guy from the bridge named Ringway, and he tells him to send patrols to find the Doctor and his companion and make them scapegoats for the disappearances of the other crew members. So that's this is the dastardly plot of the Cybermen. So the Doctor and Adric then hear like screams of two murdered crew members from a patrol, and as we've mentioned, Jimmy, this once again is caught standing over the bodies.
Yeah.
Yep. And I like how they hang a lantern on it, because Adric is like, Doctor, we've got to get out of here before we get blamed for this. And just at that moment, someone comes up and blames them for it. But as he's about to blame them, the Doctor is like, you're right, Adric, we better get out of here.
So there's this great bit of dialogue between the captain and Ringway, which really kind of shines a spotlight on a tendency in almost all sci-fi and even cop shows. Ringway says to the captain on the communicator, "I've apprehended 2 stowaways, Captain." And she says, "Apprehended? Why can't he just say caught?" So melodramatic.
Yeah. Well, one thing we didn't mention is when the captain first walks in, Ringway calls her mom, and she said, "Don't call me mom it's Captain. Don't call me mom on the bridge. It's Captain." So this is her son that she's berating.
What?
Oh, I
think he called her
way.
ma'am.
Marm,
which
or ma'am, but it commonly pronounced marm. But I like that headcanon. If he's her son, that makes it even better.
Oh, he's even more of a evil jerk.
Yeah.
And they've been teasing. There's also kind of a natural fit with him and the Cybermen, because they've been teasing him about how stern he is all the time. He never lightens up.
Right. Never. Always be wary of the guy who's never lightened up. Maybe he's a secret Cyberman. So the Cybermen now discuss amongst themselves that the Doctor is a prisoner, and that now that he's a prisoner, they have to secure the freighter. But as you said, Jimmy, the Doctor must be taken alive so he can suffer. Which is what will bring about their next defeat. They make the classic supervillain mistake, which is, let's keep our enemy alive so we can see our victory. No, just kill him. Just do him in.
Yeah.
Don't. So the Doctor and Adric are questioned by the captain, and as they're being questioned, a massive electromagnetic field on board is detected. This is presumably the cyber leader activating his personal guard of cyber soldiers, Cybermen.
Yeah, and we see them because every episode with the Cybermen in this era after Tomb of the Cybermen has to feature Cybermen breaking through a barrier.
Yep.
Yes.
Because that was the iconic image from Tomb of the Cybermen where they came out of their sleep chambers.
Right.
So here we have these, and they do it 2 different ways in this episode. When they wake up his personal guard, we see them breaking out of plastic wrap.
Yes.
And this is nowhere near as effective as it was in Tomb of the Cybermen, where there was like a plastic barrier that they tore their way through.
Mm-hmm.
This, it looks like they've just come from the factory shrink wrapped, and they're breaking out of their own shrink wrap.
It doesn't even look like that. It looks like they just took some plastic wrap or some plastic sheeting and just laid it over them, and they just kind of pulled it off.
The Cybermen have their cling wrap for the Cybermen is as bad as the cling wrap in the drawer in my kitchen right now. It doesn't stick to anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can sympathize.
That has their cyber technology might be better than humans, but apparently their cling wrap isn't.
It's terrible. Yeah. Well, speaking of Tomb of the Cybermen, that had a certain birthing quality to it, right? I mean, there was that sense of, this is just, I'm unwrapping my package from Amazon. I mean, it's really, not the same thing at all. But when they bust out of these tubes these silos that they're being transported in,
that's the second way they do it later on. When it's going to turn out all of the cargo on this ship is actually Cybermen, unbeknownst to the crew.
15,000 of them.
Yeah. So Lieutenant Scott, the soldier, he's still stomping around the TARDIS control room. He wants to go find the Doctor, but Nyssa has this intuition that something's not right and they need to wait. So the captain refuses to stop the ship to investigate whatever's going on, because if they stop, they'll be boarded by security. And then she says, not only will we lose our bonus, but we'll have to pay a fine because we're late. And so the Doctor, then responds, whoever's stowed away on the ship is using it to get to Earth to finish what they started with this bomb, and thus she is doing exactly what they want her to do. They've manipulated her. She's not buying it.
And we get some more clarity on exactly what the Cybermen's plot is. We get an answer to why a bomb rather than a missile. It's because Earth is on red alert because there is a peace conference, as you mentioned, Dom, and there are heads of multiple different planets, presumably Earth colonies, that are meeting together to sign a pact to go to war against the cyber race.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Cybermen want to disrupt the peace conference by killing all the presidents of these different planets, as if that won't double human efforts to deal with Cybermen.
Well, if we kill all their leaders, they obviously can't go to war with us, right?
Yeah. And so they planted a bomb that would kill large numbers of people on Earth, including presumably all the leaders, and then they have this invasion force on the freighter to mop up anybody who survives the bomb. But now that the Doctor has defused the bomb, they have to come up with Plan B.
Yes. So, as I like this moment where Lieutenant Scott and his soldiers are going to go find the Doctor, by the way, and Tegan says, "I'm going with you," but she stops and says, "I need to change out of these impractical clothes and go, and I'll switch clothes with the paleontologist who survived and put on her jumpsuit." I just love the fact that she recognizes that she's been wearing this impractical set of clothing for a number of stories now.
She's been running through forests and deserts and God knows what else. But hey, now she needs to change when she's on a space freighter.
Exactly.
In her air hostess stewardess uniform.
Yeah, that's right.
I found it a little impractical. It's like I'm going to stop and change clothes in the middle of this emergency.
Yeah.
But there's a reason they get her into this much more drab set of coveralls. And it's so that she can be Ripley from Alien.
Oh my gosh,
because if you notice how they get her into it piece by piece. First they get her into the drab overalls. She's got the dark hair.
Yep.
But then she gets into the drab overalls. Then they get her a big gun in a little bit, which she starts using. I mean, she guns a Cyberman right in the chest and on the ground and kills him. And then they get her separated from the rest of the space soldiers, so she's alone on the huge industrial ship with her big gun and her Ripley overalls looking for danger.
You're totally right. This is totally an Aliens ripoff. So I do like the fact that as they're sneaking through this massive ship, she starts complaining that it's so big that they'll never find the Doctor. And Lieutenant Scott points out, "You wanted to come." And she says, "I know, I'm just a mouth on legs."
Yes, the classic line. She often gets described that way. It's great to hear her say it.
Yep. Yeah, I just thought that was funny. It's self-realization there. So the Cybermen start attacking the crewmen who had put up this barrier to prevent them from getting at them, and they shoot back ineffectively. Their weapons are useless against them.
And I think there's a reason their weapons are useless against the Cybermen. It's because they fire candy stripe rays.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the rays coming out of these things, and it's like, this is electronic candy canes, guys. And that candy canes aren't going to hurt anything as long as you're not in My Little Pony or something.
Well, this is where the Doctor finally realizes that what they're up against is the Cybermen. He sees them on a screen, so he knows who they are. Ringway, the ship's officer who was complaining earlier, he comes back to the bridge, and it turns out, like I said, he's the traitor working for the Cybermen. Adric, realizing that who the Cybermen are and what they're allergic to, starts pulling his gold star off of his shirt, but Ringway stops him.
Right, and the Doctor, there's a nice little bit of dialogue here where the Doctor, because Adric has never met the Cybermen before, and the Doctor is talking to Ringway, the traitor, or is talking about Ringway, the traitor, to the crew, and it's like, "Oh, I wonder what the Cybermen have paid you in. I bet it wasn't gold. They're kind of allergic to that. It clogs up their breathing things, doesn't it?"
Yeah.
And he's saying it in a way that sounds actually pretty natural, but Adric takes the hint.
Yeah.
And starts taking off his gold star badge for mathematical excellence.
Right, but Ringway notices, and it gets taken away from him. But
the doctor ends up with it.
Right, because they then overpower Ringway just as the Cybermen reach the bridge, and they close the blast doors to the bridge. I do like. So Ringway is knocked out, but as he recovers, the captain says, "Oh, that's a pity. I'd composed a particularly nasty epitaph for you." Which, again, she gets some great lines. I really like the captain in this one. Then the Cybermen start cutting through the door to the bridge, so the Doctor comes up with a plan to use the antimatter containment technology of the ship. They don't use magnetic bottles, apparently, but to stabilize the structure of the door. And I also like the fact that Adric just like bugging the Doctor in the midst of having to put this thing together. He's bugging the Doctor to explain the plan to him. Just explain it to me really quick. I'm trying to save Earth.
Yeah.
Save our lives.
I thought it was back when they were defusing the bomb in the cave. It's like the Doctor and Adric are having this lengthy conversation about what's going on. And it's like, Adric, shut your mouth and let him defuse the bomb.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So meanwhile, Lieutenant Scott and his soldiers attack 2 Cybermen sentries, injuring them. One of them manages to get away, but Tegan, as you mentioned, runs out to grab the other Cyberman's gun and shoots him while he's on the ground. Like, she's no mercy on this one. This is although I wonder if she realizes they're not just robots. That there's a part of
Probably
a person
not.
in there.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not, because they even refer to them. They say, "What are those things? Robots?" And they assume, and then after that, they refer to them as robots because the Doctor's not there to tell them what they really are. By the way, I love the antimatter nonsense in this. The Doctor on the bridge is saying how the antimatter, because it will annihilate if it comes into contact with normal matter, must be in a container that is like totally stable and inert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they've got a device that constantly readjusts the molecular structure of the containment box or whatever it is holding the antimatter. And this is like, no, this would not work.
Yeah.
There's magnetic bottles or go home.
Right.
But nevertheless, it lets them do something really cool, because as the Cybermen are melting the door with their thermal lance, which is a great name, it gets to the point that they should be able to walk through the melted door. And as they do, the Doctor uses the molecular rejigging device to stabilize the door as a Cyberman is halfway through it. And so you get this Cyberman like frozen in carbonite there on the door. And he stays there for the rest of the episode, which is great.
Yeah, there's a total, again, this is after Empire Strikes Back, so I'm thinking this must be an homage to Han Solo frozen in carbonite that year.
Could be.
So the Cybermen need to blow, that just like forget about the thermal lance, just blow the door up, which is what they should have done in the first place, is blow the door with the explosives.
They use a different door though.
Yes, because their guy is stuck in it. And then they end up capturing everyone and kill Ringway, thinking that he deceived them about how many crewmen were actually aboard the freighter, because the Scott and his soldiers are running about doing things, and Ringway didn't know about it. And so it's very interesting how they immediately think he's deceived them, but to what end? Like he's obviously still on your side. He's still holding the captain.
Well, the Cybermen would have just killed him anyways. It's just this was a good excuse to do it at that point.
This is true. So the Cybermen the 15,000 Cybermen begin to emerge from their silos, which catches Scott and Tegan and the soldiers unaware and surrounded by...
And now it's just overwhelming. They were kind of holding their own and, making a little progress against a handful of Cybermen, but there's just no way they're taking on 15,000.
Right. And this is where Tegan gets separated. So then the Doctor is at this point surmises that what the Cybermen have done is turn the freighter into a flying bomb, that they're going to fly it into Earth.
They've decided to 9/11 Earth.
So and then this is where they talk about the conference as the target. Tegan gets captured by a Cyberman and is carried off to the bridge eventually.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the fact that you have multiple heads of planets together to form a pact against the Cyber Empire means the Cyber Empire is perceived as a big threat,
right?
By humans, and therefore humans ought to recognize Cybermen when they see them, but nobody on the ship does.
That's true. That's very interesting.
If I headcanon that, they've been off on some space pickup freight mission for years or something when all this came up, and they're so focused on their bonus they didn't read the news, I guess.
So Lieutenant Scott and his soldiers, they get back to the TARDIS, but as they go in, 2 Cybermen jump out and attack them and get inside the TARDIS. And one gets killed, but the other is caught in the door and manages to kill this scientist, the paleontologist Kyle, who, again, this is like the second time I've mentioned her. She really didn't have anything to do with this episode.
She was their tour guide at the beginning, and that was of the serial, and that was about it.
I mean, I feel...
She was there to donate her smock to Tegan so she could be Ripley.
I feel bad. Like, it's supposed to be this emotional resonance to this character getting killed, and there's nothing because you hardly know her. So the Cyberman that's caught in the door kills Kyle, which isn't there one of the characters on Alien named Kyle? Maybe. And then he's killed himself. And so the Scott and the others are with Nyssa on the TARDIS. The Cyber leader discusses on the bridge how the Doctor's feelings for his companions is a weakness he can exploit, and he proves it by threatening Tegan and that sort of thing.
I like how this gets introduced because the Cybermen have captured Tegan and brought her to the bridge, and as she's being brought in, the Cyber leader says, "Who is this?" And the Doctor gets in front of Tegan and says, "An Earthling, no one of consequence." And Tegan says, "Thanks a lot," and he says, "Be quiet." And I love this. This is good. This is, for this era, playful sniping between the Doctor and Tegan works. And this goes by really fast, and both of the actors play it well. And so it comes across as playful sniping as opposed to relentless bickering that we have between the 6th Doctor and Perry.
Right, that's true. Yeah, it has a very different feel. So the Cybermen start to open an airlock to abandoned ship because, of course, it's going to crash into Earth. And I guess they're just stepping out into space, which, given the fact that things in motion tend to stay in motion...
I thought they mentioned they mentioned about a fleet coming to pick him up, but there must have been another ship involved somewhere, though they really don't show it.
I guess, yeah. Maybe there was a ship there because the Cyber leader's plan is to take the TARDIS off and watch the. But I love this idea that they're all stepping out of the airlock and just floating next to the ship as it plunges into the atmosphere because they didn't think of that. So the Cyber leader takes the Doctor and Tegan to the TARDIS, but orders the others to stay on the bridge with the captain, the executive officer, and Adric to die. Along with some sentries, because they want to observe how they die. That it's a way to observe their weakness or whatever.
Yeah, and why Adric? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. He's willing to let the Doctor take Tegan back to the TARDIS, but not the other companion.
Well, he's taking Tegan because he uses her as leverage. So he only needs one leverage, I guess. I think that's what it is. So Tegan and the Doctor object, but Adric said, convinces him to leave him, that he'll find his own way. Which he won't.
Yeah.
Well, he will. It's just not a very long road ahead of him.
That's right. So as the Doctor and the Cybermen arrive at the TARDIS, Scott and his soldiers, meanwhile, have gone around the other way to get to the bridge, and they disable the guards there. And then more Cybermen break out of silos and head toward the bridge. This is a never-ending... Why are they still in the silos if they had to abandon ship? Never mind. So... Adric starts trying to disarm these navigational controls that have been locked by cyber technology, and he needs to solve 3 mathematical problems. I just love this idea that it comes down to solving 3 math problems.
I like how the first officer says, "Well, that could take forever," and Adric says, "Then I suggest we start at once."
Right. So back on the TARDIS, Tegan's upset at being forced to watch the destruction of her planet, and in doing so, hits the TARDIS controls, sending the TARDIS tumbling out of control, and sending the freighter back in time along with the TARDIS, but still heading toward Earth.
And that's something that they had been warning about, that because of their hurry to get to Earth, they're kind of pushing their warp drive, and it could become unbalanced.
Right.
Which it then does, and so they start moving back in time. And at this point in the episode, we have a lot of intercutting going on. This is quite tense. I noticed, like, for me, the first 2 parts of this, where they're in the caves, they're okay, but they're not that engaging. But once they get to the freighter, lots of stuff starts happening, and it gets progressively more intense. And at this point, we've got like intercutting between three different tense situations. We've got the situation on the bridge. We have ongoing battles with the Cybermen in the ship. And then we have the situation in the TARDIS, which is now dematerialized and is following the freighter with the Cybermen in control of the TARDIS.
And on the bridge, Adric has managed to crack two of the math problems. There's still the third one that he's working on. But the captain
and because he's cracked the second one, they come out of the time warp and are now 65 million years in the past.
Right. I wonder what happened 65 million years ago that we talked about at the beginning of this story. So the captain and the others, they get into the well-labeled escape pod at the back of the bridge, but Adric refuses, and at the last minute he jumps out because he realizes he can crack the last logic code and stop the freighter from hitting Earth. So this is when the Doctor realizes that they've traveled back in time 65 million years.
And he hints about it to Tegan, saying, think about it. Because the Cybermen have been gloating that, this is great. We're going back in time now, so Earth's history will be forever altered, and this will be even better for us.
Right.
And Tegan is horrified at that, and the Doctor's like, no, think about this. We talked about this earlier. Actually, Earth's going to be just fine as this freighter hits it. Your history is going to unfold exactly as it did.
Right.
In other words, we're in a bootstrap paradox. Mm-hmm. And as the Doctor is suddenly declaring Earth is safe, we cut to Adric back in the control room of the bridge trying to solve the third logic problem, and we know he's not going to make it.
Right. We know that he's not going to be able to solve that problem because the ship does hit Earth. So this is when Lieutenant Scott in the escape pod radios to the Doctor that Adric is still on board. And so the Doctor uses Adric's gold star. He shoves it and crumbles it into the Cyber Leader's front vent thingy, his breathing apparatus, but not before the Cyber Leader shoots up the control panel, which will prevent them from rescuing Adric, of course. Meanwhile, a lone Cyberman arrives on the bridge. Yeah. A lone Cyberman arrives on the bridge and shoots up the control panel.
Yeah. Oh, the doctor also takes the Cyberman's gun as he's staggering around, gasping.
Oh, yeah.
And screaming from the gold star. He takes this gun, puts it right up to his chest plate, and fires repeatedly.
Yeah. Yes. He really goes to town on him. And it's too late. The freighter explodes. Adric is dead. And we have a silent credits roll over Adric's crumbled star on the floor.
Or is he dead?
Well, Big Finish. You never know.
Yeah. Well,
actually, there is some Big Finish follow up on Adric. So there are a few, like in the sequence where Adric is trying to solve the third logic problem, he keeps thinking he has it right, and it like 2 or 3 times. He thinks he's got it, and then it doesn't work, and then he thinks he's got it again, and it doesn't work. And then he's like, oh, of course. And at that moment, a wounded Cyberman who was still on the ship shoots the control panel, so Adric cannot enter his new solution. And as he sees the looming Earth coming up on the view screen in front of him, he says, "Now I'll never know if I was right."
It all comes back to the math,
which is a nice line, you
right?
know?
And it's fitting the character. It's fitting the character perfectly. That would be his last words.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and we really do end with it. Boom, the freighter explodes. The Doctor turns the scanner off, and we have Tegan, like, Adric, Doctor, oh no, and then Nyssa and Tegan cry on each other's shoulders, and that's it. Like, there's no further exposition. They just roll credits, and it's silent
roll credits too. Usually in this season, this time, they're showing the names
fading in and out. Yeah,
they're fading in and out, and this is a roll, like old school rolling credits.
Right.
Yeah. There will be follow up, obviously, on Adric's death at the beginning of the next episode, which is Time Flight.
Yeah.
The companions, Tegan and Nyssa, do bring up, hey, Doctor, time machine, let's go. And Tegan even points out, hey, the freighter can still hit Earth. We just need to pop in and grab Adric.
Right. Right.
You know, it doesn't have to change history. And so the Doctor is going to have to deal with that.
Interesting. Apparently, there is Matthew. What's his name? Matthew Waterhouse. It shows up in some form in the next episode, but
as an image,
solely so that he could be in the credits, so that when people saw the credits before this episode aired, they wouldn't think, why isn't Matthew Waterhouse in Time Flight? Another bit of misdirection so that they can preserve the surprise. Gosh, in this age, with the age of the internet, there's no way to.
Well, and it was interesting too. I was reading on TARDIS Wiki that they would have like a balcony where people could watch filming going on, watch them film these shows, and they shut that down completely for this serial.
That's right. Yeah, they wouldn't. They just would not want to. And ostensibly it was so that people wouldn't see the Cybermen, but also because they wouldn't see Adric's demise. So any last notes on this? That's how the serial ends. From my point of view, I thought this was well done. I actually thought it was a good story. The pacing was good. We didn't have those long, drawn-out filler moments. There was, at least in the second two episodes. But do you guys have any last notes, Father Cory?
No. This is enjoyable to watch this episode again. You know, even with knowing kind of the history of it, and you can imagine what the reaction was like back in the day when Adric all of a sudden was dead, and that was it.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Yeah, it was really dramatic. I like this as well. I think even though it has flaws, I think it's a well done story, and it ramps up, and you got lots of interesting stuff happening, especially once they get to the space freighter. I think Adric's death is effective, and the broken gold star against a black background for and silent credits with no music. I mean, that's poignant.
Yeah,
it really puts an exclamation point at the end of this, dramatic death. Also, I like at the beginning of episode 1 when the Doctor and Adric are getting into each other's faces. The Doctor is telling Adric at the beginning of the conversation he really needs to read this book. And the book is Black Orchid, which he was given at the end of the previous episode. It's like, Adric, this book is so awesome. The scholarship is so great. You should read this. There's also a famous speech by Peter Davison on the space freighter as they're talking to the cyber leader. Peter Davison is telling him because of his lack of emotions, he'll never know the simple pleasures in life, like smelling a flower, watching a sunset, or eating a well-prepared meal. and that's always kind of struck fans and me as a little bit, okay, flower, check, sunset, check, standard tropes here. Well-prepared meal? Really? That's the third thing? That's not one of the standards.
Right.
In this kind of speech. Also, when the Doctor is talking to Captain Briggs about the cyber leader, she asks if all of them are like this, and he tells her that this cyber leader is positively flippant compared to some of the others, which is true. He uses things like sarcasm and stuff, and the cyber leader reminded me of the lone Cyberman.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he's got these emotions and we understand his motives and he's much more human. And that makes him a much more interesting character. If I were showrunner on Doctor Who and had been saddled with this Cybermen don't have emotions, even though it makes them much more interesting characters thing, I would retcon that the way they did it for Vulcans in Star Trek and say, Cybermen have emotions, but they're repressed in certain ways so that you don't have the body horror of what's happening to the people, so they don't explode like they do in some New Who episodes when they realize what they are.
Yeah.
So they have limited emotions, but they do have emotions. This we're emotionless is nonsense.
Yep.
Also, I like the Cybermen's giant silver moon boots that they're all wearing. Very 1980s. And this episode has a huge body count with all of the people who are dying between the geologists in the cave and the space military people and the crewmen on the ship and the Cybermen and Adric.
Yes. They get everyone gets mown down. There's very few people left at the end. Like all the soldiers, there was a big squad of like 30 of them at the beginning, and by the end, there's like 3 left. Yeah, that's it. It's a tough one. All right, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up. And as we do, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Nick W., Jimmy C., Ernie M., Clint V., and Allison H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. What did you think of this 5th Doctor story, Earthshock? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/Doctor Who, or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 6th Doctor story, Time Lash. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, now I'll never know if I was right.
This is gonna be fun.